After I became a millionaire, my sister told me what she'd never dared to say. My name is Victoria Chen. I'm the founder and CEO of Lumiere Properties, a luxury real estate firm specializing in historic estates across New England. After I became a millionaire, my sister told me what she'd never dared to say. The morning it happened, I was standing in the sunroom of my Boston townhouse, watching snow fall over Beacon Hill through glass that cost more than my childhood home. Steam rose from my cappuccino in delicate spirals. Everything smelled like white orchids and expensive wood polish. The kind of quiet money makes, thick, insulated, perfect. My phone was face down on the marble console. I'd been avoiding it for 20 minutes. Claire had texted at dawn. "We need to talk. Really talk, please." Before we continue, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Like this video so this story reaches more hearts, and subscribe for the next journeys. I'd built my empire on reading people, on understanding what they wanted before they knew it themselves. Historic properties were my language. I could walk through a crumbling Victorian and see exactly who needed to own it, what story they were trying to tell about themselves with that particular set of bones and ghosts. But my sister's message made my hands cold. Claire was 3 years younger, an artist living in Providence in a converted warehouse she could barely afford. We'd grown up in a cramped apartment in Dorchester, daughters of a seamstress mother who worked herself transparent trying to give us better. I'd escaped through ambition. Claire had escaped through her paintings, wild, emotional canvases that sold occasionally but never enough. I texted back, "Dinner. My place. Tonight." The response was immediate. "Okay." One word. No punctuation. Claire always used too many exclamation points even in grocery lists. This flatness felt wrong. I spent the day at a property showing in Cambridge, a federal-style mansion for a tech founder who wanted something with history. I walked him through rooms that had hosted literary salons in the 1840s, but my mind kept drifting to Claire's text. "We need to talk. Really talk." About what? Money? I'd offered to help her 1,000 times. Pride? We'd had that argument already. Something else? Something I'd been too successful, too busy, too carefully composed to notice. The showing ended. My client would make an offer. I drove home through winter twilight, past brownstones glowing gold behind their windows, each one a story I could price to the dollar. But I couldn't price whatever was coming. Claire arrived at 7, snowflakes melting in her dark hair. She wore an oversized sweater and jeans with paint stains at the knee, the uniform of someone who'd never learned to dress for the life I lived now. She looked thin, older than 31. "Your home is beautiful," she said, "the way you'd compliment a museum." "It's yours too," I said automatically. "Any time." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That's not how it works, Vic." We ate the catered meal I'd ordered, Mediterranean, her favorite, at my dining table that seated 12. She pushed food around her plate. I drank wine and waited, my heart beat too loud in my ears. Finally, she set down her fork. "I need to tell you something I should have said years ago," Claire began, her voice quiet. "Before everything changed, before you became this." I felt something crack inside my chest, not breaking, but opening. "What is it?" I asked. She looked at me with eyes that held something I couldn't name yet, something that had been living between us for longer than I knew. "That night Mom got sick. The night everything started falling apart. You remember what you did?" I remembered. Of course I remembered. That was the night that made me who I am. "Yes," I whispered. "There's something about that night," Claire said slowly, "that you never understood." The room felt colder. Outside, Boston's elegant streets glittered with new snow, indifferent and beautiful. The next morning, I woke to silence that felt different. Claire had stayed in the guest room, the one with the view of the public garden, decorated in soft grays and creams that some designer insisted conveyed understated elegance. She'd barely touched anything. The bed looked almost unslept in. We'd talked until midnight, but she hadn't finished. She'd started crying instead, then apologized, then said she needed sleep before she could continue. I'd let her retreat, though every instinct I'd honed in boardrooms told me to push, to close, to finish the conversation. But this wasn't a negotiation. This was my sister. I made coffee in my restaurant-grade kitchen, the machine hissing and gurgling in the pre-dawn quiet. Through the windows, the city was still dark, just a few early lights beginning to glow. I'd chosen this townhouse specifically for its morning light. The way sun would eventually flood the eastern rooms, making everything look renewed. But standing there in my silk robe, holding bone china that cost more per cup than Claire probably spent on groceries in a week, I felt the weight of what she'd almost said pressing against my ribs. That night, Mom got sick. You remember what you did? I'd been 19. Claire was 16. Our mother collapsed during her shift at the alteration shop, and I'd gotten the call at my college library where I was studying for finals. I'd driven home in a borrowed car, handled the hospital, handled everything. I dropped out that semester, then permanently. Started working. Started climbing. That was the night I'd decided I would never be powerless again. Never be the daughter who couldn't afford the better hospital, the specialist, the private room. Mom survived, but something in me had calcified into pure ambition. Claire appeared in the kitchen doorway, wearing the same clothes from yesterday. Her hair was tangled, her face bare of makeup. Coffee? I offered. Please. I poured her a cup. She wrapped both hands around it like she was cold, though the house was perfectly heated at 72 degrees. I have a site visit at 10, I said carefully, but I can cancel. No. She shook her head. Go. I need to think about how to say this anyway. Claire. I'm not leaving, she interrupted. I promise. I'll be here when you get back. We'll finish this. There was something in her voice I'd never heard before. Not anger, not resentment. Something quieter and more devastating. Certainty. I went to my site visit in Brookline, a Queen Anne that needed complete restoration. The owner wanted to discuss timelines and budgets, but I kept losing focus. I'd nod at the right moments, take notes, suggest contractors. But inside, I was somewhere else. What had I missed about that night? I remembered the fluorescent hospital lights, my mother's gray face against white sheets, the doctor explaining bills we couldn't pay, Claire sitting in a plastic chair, looking smaller than 16, silent. I'd told her, I'll take care of everything, I promise. And I had. I'd taken care of everything for years, put Claire through art school, bought Mom a condo in a safe neighborhood before she passed 3 years ago, built an empire that meant none of us would ever be that powerless again. So what was I missing? By noon, I was back home. Claire was in the sunroom, sketching in a notebook. She did that when she was anxious, quick, nervous drawings that she'd never show anyone. I brought lunch, I said, holding up bags from the French bistro she used to love when we were younger, back when eating there was a special occasion. She closed the notebook. Thank you. We ate at the small table by the windows. Outside, the snow had turned to rain, everything gray and blurred. That night at the hospital, Claire said suddenly, not looking at me. Do you remember what I said to you? I searched my memory. You were quiet. You didn't say much. I said one thing. Her voice was soft. In the waiting room, while you were on the phone with the billing department, fighting about payment plans. I shook my head. I don't remember. I know. She finally met my eyes. That's part of what I need to tell you. You didn't hear me then, and I was too afraid to make you hear me. The rain picked up, drumming against the windows. Somewhere in the house, a clock was ticking. What did you say? I whispered. Claire took a breath. I said, I'm scared. Not about Mom, about something else. That afternoon, I couldn't sit still. I paced the length of my living room, past the abstract paintings I'd bought, because a consultant said they projected success, past the custom shelving holding books I'd never had time to read, past windows that framed Boston like a postcard of someone else's life. Claire had gone quiet again after lunch. She'd asked for time alone, retreated to the guest room with her notebook. I'd given her space, but the waiting was carving me hollow. I'm scared, not about Mom, about something else. What else could there have been? Our mother was dying. Or we thought she was. Everything else seemed trivial in comparison. I'd been so focused on fixing the crisis, on being the strong one, on making sure we survived that night and every night after. Had I been so focused on solving that I'd stopped seeing? I made myself work. Emails, contract reviews, a conference call with architects about a property in Newport. But my mind kept sliding away, returning to that hospital waiting room, trying to excavate a memory I apparently never stored properly in the first place. Claire at 16, small in that plastic chair, her voice saying something I didn't hear. What kind of sister doesn't hear? The kind who's too busy saving everyone, maybe. Too busy performing competence. Too busy building the armor that would eventually become this life, this townhouse, this business, this carefully constructed empire of control. I'd always told myself I did it for us, for Claire and Mom, so we'd never be vulnerable again. But standing there in my perfect living room, I felt the first whisper of a different truth. Maybe I'd done it for me, to feel powerful, to never feel that helpless terror again. And maybe, in becoming powerful, I'd stopped being present. Around 5, Claire emerged. She looked steadier somehow, like she'd made a decision. Can we walk? She asked. In the rain? I think better when I'm moving. We bundled into coats, mine cashmere, hers a worn parka she'd owned since college, and walked down to the Charles River. The path was nearly empty, rain misting everything gray and soft. Boston's skyline rose in the distance, blurred and beautiful. We walked in silence for a while, our footsteps on wet pavement, the river moving slowly beside us. I need you to understand something, Claire finally said. What I'm going to tell you? It's not about blame. It's about truth. My throat tightened. Okay. That night at the hospital, I was 16. You were 19. You were my big sister, and you were handling everything. And you seemed so strong. She paused, watching the river. I thought you could handle anything. So when I said I was scared about something else, and you didn't hear me, I took it as a sign. A sign of what? That I should stay quiet. That my thing, whatever I was scared about, wasn't as important as the crisis you were managing. Her voice was steady but sad. So I stayed quiet, for years. And you kept being strong and successful and busy, and the distance between us just grew. I felt something cold spreading through my chest that had nothing to do with the weather. What were you scared about? I asked. She stopped walking, turned to face me. Rain caught in her hair like diamonds, but her eyes were dry and clear. I was scared that you were becoming someone I wouldn't recognize, she said quietly. Even then, even at 19, I saw how you changed after that night, how you got harder, more determined. How you stopped painting with me. Stopped talking about anything except plans and goals and getting ahead. I was trying to protect us. I know. She cut me off gently. I know that's what you thought you were doing. But Vic, you weren't just building a business. You were building walls. The words landed like stones. I wanted to argue, to defend myself, to explain all the reasons why I'd needed to be that person. But something stopped me, because she was right. I had built walls, tall ones, beautiful ones, walls made of success and money and control. And somewhere along the way, I'd locked Claire on the other side of them. Why didn't you tell me this before? My voice came out broken. I tried, she said. In small ways. But you were always moving so fast, Vic. Always onto the next deal, the next property, the next achievement. And I was proud of you. I am proud of you. But I also started to wonder if you even knew who I was anymore. If you saw me, or just saw the sister you thought you'd saved. We stood there in the rain, two women who'd grown up in the same small apartment, but somehow ended up in completely different worlds. There's more, Claire said softly. More I need to tell you. About what happened after that night. About choices I made because I thought I couldn't talk to you. About who I became in your shadow. The rain fell harder. The river kept moving. And I realized that all my money, all my success, all my carefully constructed perfection couldn't fix what was breaking open between us. Because this wasn't a problem I could solve. This was a truth I had to hear. We went back to the townhouse soaked and shivering. I made tea, expensive loose leaf that I'd bought from some boutique and never opened. And we sat in the living room as evening fell over Beacon Hill. The lamps cast warm pools of light, but the shadows between them felt vast. Claire wrapped her hands around her mug, staring into it like she could read answers in the steam. After that night at the hospital, after you dropped out of school to work, I made myself invisible, she said. I figured that was my job. To not be another burden. To not need anything from you when you were already carrying so much. You were never a burden, I said immediately. She looked up at me, and her expression was patient and sad. You say that now. But Vic, do you remember my high school graduation? The question hit me like cold water. I searched my memory, grasping for details. Of course, I was there. You came for 30 minutes. You sat in the back. You left before the reception because you had a meeting with a potential investor. Her voice wasn't accusing, just factual. I told everyone you were busy building something important. I made excuses for you. The memory sharpened into focus. I'd been 22, working for a commercial real estate firm, trying to make connections that would eventually let me start my own company. There had been an investor, someone who could only meet that evening. I'd made a choice. I thought you understood, I said weakly. I did understand. That's the problem. Claire set down her tea. I understood that your dreams were bigger than my moments. I understood that you were sacrificing for both of us. So I learned to not expect you at things. My art shows, my birthdays, even just coffee dates I'd suggest and you'd cancel. Each example was a small cut, and together they were bleeding me out. I tried to stay close to you, she continued, but you were moving so fast, becoming so successful. And I was just Claire, the artist sister who wasn't making much money, who didn't have her life together like you did. I started to feel like a reminder of everything you'd left behind. That's not true, I protested, but my voice cracked. Isn't it? She met my eyes steadily. When was the last time you asked me about my work? Not the sales. You always ask if I've sold anything, like that's the only measure that matters. But when did you last ask me what I'm actually painting? What I'm trying to say. I opened my mouth and closed it. I couldn't remember. When was the last time we talked about anything real? She pressed. Not logistics, not your properties or my rent, but real things, feelings, fears, dreams. The silence that followed was deafening. Claire stood up, pacing to the window. The rain had stopped, leaving the street slick and reflective. 3 years ago, when Mom died, I needed you. Not your money for the funeral, though thank you for that. I needed my sister. Someone to cry with. Someone to remember her with. I was there, I said, my voice small. You organized everything. She turned to face me. You handled the service, the flowers, the reception. You were perfect and efficient and in control. But Vic, you never cried. Not once that I saw. You never broke down. You never let me see you grieve. I was trying to be strong for you. I didn't need you to be strong. The words burst out of her, louder than anything she'd said so far. I needed you to be human. I needed to know I wasn't alone in losing her. But you were so busy being the one who had everything together that I felt like I was mourning by myself. Tears were streaming down her face now, and something inside me was crumbling. After the funeral, I went through a really dark time, she said, her voice shaking. I couldn't paint. I couldn't get out of bed some days. I thought about calling you so many times, but you were always texting about some new deal, some new property. You seemed so far away, living in a world I couldn't reach. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered. Because I was afraid. She wiped her eyes roughly. Afraid that if I showed you how much I was struggling, you'd try to fix it with money. You'd offer to pay for therapy or rent or whatever, and that would become the thing between us instead of actual connection. And I'd rather have distance than feel like your charity case. The word hit me like a slap. I never thought of you that way. Maybe not consciously, Claire said. But Vic, every time you've helped me, and you have helped me, I'm not ungrateful. It comes with this energy of, I'll take care of it. Like I'm a problem to be solved, not a person to be with. I felt myself fragmenting. Every certainty I'd built my life on was shifting under my feet. I thought I was being a good sister, a responsible sister, the one who stepped up when things got hard. But I'd never asked Claire what kind of sister she actually needed. Last month, she said quietly, I sold a painting, a big one, to a gallery in New York. It's going to be in a show. I stared at her. That's incredible. Why didn't you tell me? I did. Her smile was painful to look at. I texted you. You responded, great news. Let's celebrate soon. But we never did. You got busy with that estate sale in Cambridge, and I didn't follow up because I've learned not to expect follow-up. The words were a knife between my ribs, precise and devastating. That painting, Claire continued, was called The Sister I Remember. It's about you, the you from before. When we used to lie on our bedroom floor and dream about the future together. When you'd let me paint your nails ridiculous colors. When we'd laugh until we couldn't breathe. I remember that, I said, my voice breaking. Do you? She looked at me with something like hope and grief mixed together. Because sometimes I think the sister I remember doesn't exist anymore. That you killed her to build all this. And I've been mourning her for years. But I couldn't tell you because how do you tell someone you miss who they used to be? I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. The room was too small and too big all at once. I don't want your money, Vic, Claire said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. I never did. I just wanted my sister back. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my bed. King-sized custom mattress, sheets with a thread count higher than my childhood address, staring at the ceiling and watching my entire life rearrange itself in my mind. Every achievement I'd been proud of suddenly looked different. Every sacrifice I'd thought was noble suddenly felt selfish. I'd told myself I was building security for us, but I'd been building distance. Around 3 a.m, I got up and walked through my townhouse. Really looked at it. The art I'd bought because it was supposed to appreciate in value. The furniture chosen by someone else. The kitchen where I barely cooked. The dining table for 12 where I usually ate alone. I'd created a museum to success. But where was the life? I found myself standing outside the guest room door. A thin line of light showed underneath. Claire was awake too. I knocked softly. "Can I come in?" "Yes." She was sitting on the bed, her notebook open, sketching by lamplight. She looked up as I entered, and I saw in her face the little sister I'd pushed in grocery carts, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. When had I stopped seeing her? "I need to tell you something," I said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "And I need you to let me say it all before you respond." She nodded, setting aside her notebook. "You're right," I began, and saying it out loud felt like stepping off a cliff. About all of it. I did build walls. I did disappear into achievement. I did stop being present. My voice shook, but I pushed through. And the worst part is, I didn't even realize I was doing it. I thought I was being strong. I thought I was protecting us. But really, I was protecting myself. Claire stayed quiet, listening. "That night at the hospital terrified me," I continued, "not just because Mom was sick, but because I felt so powerless, so small. And I hated that feeling so much that I decided I would never feel it again. I would make enough money, build enough success, create enough control that nothing could touch us." I took a shaky breath. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being about us. It became about proving I wasn't that scared 19-year-old anymore. Every property I acquired, every deal I closed, every milestone I hit, it was like I was building a wall between me and that girl who couldn't pay the hospital bills. Tears were sliding down my face now, and I didn't try to stop them. And in building those walls, I walled you out too, my own sister, the person I was supposedly doing all of this for. I looked at her directly. "I'm so sorry, Claire. I'm so sorry I wasn't there for your graduation the way I should have been. I'm sorry I didn't ask about your art. I'm sorry I didn't cry with you when Mom died. I'm sorry I made you feel like you couldn't tell me when you were struggling. Vic, I'm not finished." I wiped my eyes. "I'm sorry that I became someone who measures everything in terms of success and efficiency. That I forgot how to just be with someone without trying to fix or improve or solve. That I made you feel invisible when you were the person I should have been seeing most clearly." My voice dropped to a whisper. "Most of all, I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to choose between having a sister and having space to be yourself. You shouldn't have had to make yourself smaller so I could feel bigger." The room was quiet except for the sound of my breathing, ragged with emotion I'd apparently been holding back for years. "I don't know how to undo the damage," I said finally. "But I want to try, if you'll let me. Not by throwing money at it or fixing things, just by showing up, really showing up, the way I should have been all along." Claire's eyes were wet too. "Do you know what I've been most afraid of?" she asked softly. I shook my head. "That you were happy with the distance. That you preferred the version of us where you're the successful one and I'm the struggling artist you help occasionally. That you'd built the life you wanted and I just wasn't really part of it." The words broke something open in my chest. "No. God, no. Claire. This life." I gestured around the beautiful room. the beautiful house, the beautiful empty life. It doesn't mean anything without people who actually know me. And you're the only person left who remembers who I was before I became all this. I miss her, Claire said, and her voice was so small and honest it hurt. I miss the sister who used to sing off-key while doing dishes, who would stay up all night with me making plans that were more dream than reality, who cried at sad movies and laughed too loud and wasn't afraid to be messy. She's still here, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure that was true. Or she wants to be. I want to be. Claire reached out and took my hand. Her fingers were paint-stained and rough, and they felt more real than anything in my perfectly decorated home. I'm not asking you to give up your success, she said quietly. I'm proud of what you've built, really. But Vic, success without connection is just a beautiful prison. I know that now. I squeezed her hand. You said there was more. More you needed to tell me. She nodded slowly. There is. About the choices I made because I thought I'd lost you. About who I became when I stopped believing you could see me. She paused. About why I almost didn't come here at all. Why this conversation almost never happened. My heart clenched. What do you mean? I mean, she said carefully, that I've been planning to move away, to leave Boston, to start over somewhere you aren't, because I thought that was the only way I could breathe. The words landed like a physical blow. You were going to leave without telling me? I was going to tell you. Her voice was pained. But not the real reason. I was going to make it about opportunity, about a gallery connection, about anything except the truth, that being near you hurt too much when you weren't really there. The next morning, I called my assistant and cleared my entire schedule. Every site visit, every client meeting, every conference call, canceled. She was confused. I'd never done that before. Not once in 10 years. Family emergency, I told her, which was both true and not true at all. Claire and I spent the day doing nothing productive. We made breakfast together, actually cooked, not ordered in. Eggs that stuck to the pan, toast that burned on one side. We laughed about it. When was the last time I'd laughed about something going wrong instead of immediately trying to fix it? We walked through the public garden without discussing real estate values or development potential. We just looked at the winter bare trees, the frozen pond, the old couples walking arm in arm. Claire pointed out light and shadow the way she saw them. As an artist, not an appraiser. That's where the painting starts, she said, gesturing to the way afternoon sun caught the edge of a brownstone. In the collision between what's illuminated and what's hidden. I'd walked these streets 1,000 times and never seen them that way. In the afternoon, we went to her studio in Providence. I'd offered to pay for it years ago, and I'd been there exactly twice, both times briefly, to drop something off. Now, walking in with her, I actually looked. The space was small, cold, cluttered with canvases and paint tubes and brushes soaking in jars. It smelled like turpentine and possibility. The walls were covered with her work, not the finished pieces she sold, but the experiments, the failures, the raw attempts. This is where I'm most myself, she said quietly, watching me take it in. One wall was dedicated to a series of paintings that stopped me cold. They were all portraits of the same woman, rendered in different styles, different colors, different emotional registers. Some showed her laughing. Others showed her locked behind glass. In one, she was turning away. In another, she was reaching out. Is that you? Claire finished. All of them. I've been painting you for years, trying to capture, I don't know, who you were, who you became, who I needed you to be. I moved closer, studying each one. In some, I recognized myself. In others, I barely knew the woman she'd painted. "This one," I said, pointing to a portrait where the woman's face was half in shadow, half in harsh light. "When did you paint this?" "After Mom's funeral. When you seemed so perfectly composed, and I felt like I was falling apart." She stood beside me. "I was trying to understand how you could be so strong, or if maybe you weren't strong at all, just really good at hiding." The painting was beautiful and devastating. The woman in it looked powerful and utterly alone. "You saw me more clearly than I saw myself," I said. "That's the curse of loving someone from a distance," Claire replied. "You see them perfectly because you're not close enough for them to blur." We sat on the paint-splattered floor of her studio, our backs against the wall, and for the first time in years, we talked. Really talked. Not about logistics or money or surface things, but about fear and loneliness and all the ways we'd both been hiding. Claire told me about the months after Mom died when she could barely function, about the therapy she'd started and paid for herself because she was too proud to ask me, about the paintings that wouldn't come and the ones that came too fast, too raw, about the man she'd dated who wanted her to be less intense, less emotional, more like the successful sister he'd heard about. "I broke up with him," she said, "because I realized I'd been trying to be someone else my whole adult life. Someone quieter. Someone who needed less. Someone who wouldn't inconvenience you with big feelings or problems you couldn't solve with money." "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "I know. But Vic, I need you to understand. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I'm telling you because I want us to be real with each other. Finally. Completely." I nodded, throat tight. "There's one more thing," she said, and something in her voice made me look at her sharply. "The real reason I came to Boston this week, the real reason I needed to tell you all of this now." My heart started beating faster. "I got an offer," Claire continued. "A gallery in Santa Fe wants to represent me, full-time. It's everything I've been working toward. But it means moving across the country. It means leaving Boston, leaving you." "That's incredible," I said automatically, but my chest felt hollow. "It is," she agreed, "but I was going to turn it down." "What? Why?" She looked at me with eyes that held a decade of unspoken truths. "Because as much as the distance between us hurt, I was more afraid of actual distance, of geography making permanent what emotional distance had already started, of losing you completely." "But you can't give that up," I protested. "Not for me. Not when I've been—" "That's what I realized," she interrupted gently. "This week. Talking to you. Finally telling you everything. I realized that I can't build my life around the space you're not occupying. I can't make myself smaller forever just to stay near someone who isn't really present." The words should have hurt, but instead, they felt like truth. "But I also realized something else," Claire said, her voice soft but certain. "I realized that maybe the reason I could never bring myself to take the offer before was because I was waiting to see if we could find our way back to each other. If the sister I remembered was still in there somewhere." She turned to face me fully. "And this week, I found her," Claire said, and tears were running down both our faces now. "In those burned eggs this morning, in the way you cried last night, in the fact that you canceled everything today just to be with me. She's still there, Vic. You're still there." "So you're taking the offer?" I asked, my voice breaking. "I think I have to," she said. "For me, to see who I can become when I'm not living in your shadow, not because you're casting one, but because I keep standing in it." I understood. Of course I understood, but it didn't stop the loss from feeling enormous. "But here's what I need to know," Claire said, taking my hand. "When I go to Santa Fe, when I build something of my own out there, will you visit? Not to fix anything or help with anything or turn it into business, just to see me, to be my sister." "Yes," I said immediately. "God, yes, I'll visit, I'll call, I'll show up. Really show up, I promise." "And will you tell me," she continued, her voice dropping to almost a whisper, "the thing you've never told me? The real reason you became so driven? Because I've been painting you for years, trying to understand, and I think there's something you haven't said. Something even you might not have fully admitted to yourself." The question hung in the air between us. She was right. There was something I'd buried so deep I'd almost convinced myself it didn't exist. The light in Claire's studio was fading, turning everything soft and gold. We sat on that paint-stained floor, and I felt something inside me finally give way, not breaking, but opening, like a door I'd locked years ago and forgotten about. "You want to know the real reason?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Claire nodded, waiting. I took a breath that felt like it came from somewhere deep and ancient. That night at the hospital when Mom collapsed, when everything fell apart. I wasn't just scared of losing her. I was terrified of something else. What? Of becoming her. The words came out raw and honest. Of working myself to exhaustion for nothing. Of being powerless and invisible and expendable. Of spending my whole life sewing other people's beautiful clothes while wearing rags myself. Claire's hand tightened on mine, but she stayed quiet, letting me continue. Mom was brilliant, you know? She could look at any design and recreate it perfectly. She had this gift, but she spent 40 years in the back of someone else's shop, making minimum wage, destroying her hands and her back and her health so we could have a slightly less terrible life. My voice cracked. And the night she collapsed, all I could think was, this is what happens when you're not important enough to matter. When you're just labor. Just a body doing work no one values. Tears were streaming down my face now, years of them, finally released. I was so angry at her, I confessed. So angry that she'd settled for so little. That she'd been so humble, so grateful for scraps. That she'd taught us to be the same way. To not ask for too much. To not take up space. To be thankful for whatever we got. I looked at Claire, and I swore that night that I would never be like her. That I would be powerful and important and impossible to ignore. That I would matter so much that no one could ever dismiss me, or use me, or let me break myself for their benefit. "Oh, Vic," Claire breathed. "But somewhere along the way," I continued, proving I wasn't like Mom became the only thing that mattered. Every success was proof I'd escaped her fate. Every achievement was distance between me and that hospital room. I wasn't building something. I was running away. The confession hung in the air between us. Years of unacknowledged truth finally spoken. "And the worst part?" I said, my voice breaking completely. "Mom was never powerless. She was never invisible. She raised 2 daughters on nothing. She created beauty every day with her hands. She loved us so fiercely it kept us whole even when everything else was falling apart. She mattered so much. And I couldn't see it because I was too busy measuring worth in money and status and all the things she didn't have." Claire was crying now too. Both of us grieving the mother we'd lost and the years we'd spent misunderstanding her legacy. "I became exactly what I was running from," I said. "I destroyed myself building this empire. I sacrificed connection for control. I lost you, the person I loved most, because I was so desperate to prove I wasn't powerless that I didn't realize I was making myself alone. You didn't lose me," Claire said firmly. "I'm right here." "But I almost did. You were going to leave without telling me why. You were going to disappear because being near me hurt too much." I met her eyes. That's what powerlessness actually looks like. Not poverty, not lack of status. It's having everything and realizing the person you love most in the world has been in pain right next to you, and you never noticed. We sat there in the dying light, two sisters who'd spent years circling each other in grief and misunderstanding, finally seeing clearly. "Mom would have understood," Claire said softly. "She knew what it was like to be afraid of not being enough." "She would have told me I was being an idiot," I said with a broken laugh. "She would have said that all the houses in the world don't mean anything if you're living in them alone." "She also would have been proud of you," Claire added, "of what you built, of your strength. She just would have wanted you to be proud of yourself for who you are, not just what you own." The truth of it settled over me like a weight and a relief all at once. "When you go to Santa Fe," I said, "I want to come help you move. Not to hire movers or handle logistics, though I can do that if you want, but to see your new space, to help you paint the walls whatever color you choose, to be there at the beginning of this new chapter." Claire smiled through her tears. "I'd like that. And I want to see your show in New York. The one with the painting about me. I want to be there opening night, and I want you to tell me about every piece. Not the sales price, but what you were feeling when you made it." "Deal. And I want to start painting again," I said, surprising myself. "Just for fun. Just to make something that has no value except the making of it. Will you teach me?" "You never forgot how," Claire said gently. "You just convinced yourself it didn't matter." We stayed in that studio until full dark, talking about Mom, about childhood, about all the things we'd been too afraid or too busy to say before. And slowly, piece by piece, I felt myself becoming something other than the armor I'd built. Something softer. Something real. 3 months later, I stood in a gallery in Santa Fe surrounded by Claire's paintings. She'd created a whole series called The Sister I Remember. And in them, I finally saw myself the way she'd always seen me. Not the polished CEO, not the successful property magnate, but the girl who used to dance in the kitchen, who laughed too loud, who loved fiercely even when she was afraid. The girl who was still there, underneath everything I'd built to hide her. Claire stood beside me, radiant in a simple dress, talking to collectors and critics with a confidence I'd never seen in her before. She'd bloomed here, in this new place, becoming fully herself. And I'd kept my promise. I'd visited twice already, not to check on her or fix anything, but just to be with her, to cook terrible dinners and take long walks and talk about real things, to be sisters finally, in the way we should have been all along. My phone buzzed with a message from my assistant about a property deal back in Boston. I glanced at it, then put the phone away. The deal could wait. I was exactly where I needed to be. "You look happy," Claire said, appearing at my elbow with 2 glasses of wine. "I am," I said, and meant it. "Thank you." For what? For not giving up on me. For telling me what I needed to hear, even when it was hard. For showing me that success without connection is just a beautiful prison. She clinked her glass against mine. "You're welcome, but Vic, you did the hardest part. You listened. You changed. Not everyone can do that." Outside, the New Mexico sunset was painting the sky in colors I'd never taken time to notice before. Inside, my sister's art hung on white walls, each piece a testament to years of seeing, of feeling, of staying true to herself even when it was hard. After I became a millionaire, my sister told me what she'd never dared to say. And in hearing her, in really listening, I finally understood what wealth actually means. It's not the houses or the bank accounts or the empire I built. It's this: standing in a gallery in Santa Fe with paint under my nails from helping Claire prepare for her show. It's the late-night phone calls where we talk about nothing and everything. It's knowing that when she needs me, I'll show up. Not with solutions, but with presence. It's having someone who remembers who you were and loves you enough to tell you when you're forgetting. That's the fortune I almost lost. And now that I found it again, I'm never letting it go. If this story touched you, leave your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments and subscribe for the next journey. Sometimes the most valuable thing we own is the courage to hear the truth from the people who love us most.